Hello and welcome back to the channel, or welcome to the channel if you've never been here before. My name is Kev, and in these videos I talk about living with arthritis from the perspective of someone that has been living with arthritis for the last 20 or so years. Today I want to talk about something that I call my flare-up protocol. Now, this I'm going to claim to be the inventor of this. I haven't really heard anyone else talk about it. I'm sure people do this. I'm sure it's a concept, but I call it the flare protocol. That's what we're going to talk about today, and I'm going to keep this brief because it's a busy time of year. I'm sure you're all busy, so let's try and just jump straight in. So what is a flare-up? First of all, if you've got arthritis or some sort of chronic condition, you probably already know what a flare-up is, but just to cover it briefly, it's a period of time where your arthritis or whatever condition symptoms get worse. So this could be related to some specific trigger. It might come out of nowhere, and it always sucks. You might have 3 or 4 days or two or 3 weeks where you're feeling good, and then all of a sudden your symptoms kind of just hit you like a bus and you're just knocked out of it for a few days, and it can just be horrible. So what is a flare-up protocol? Well, a flare protocol is a default mode of operation for when you experience a flare-up. It's the exercises you do, the food you eat, the relaxation techniques you use, whatever it is you need to try and get on top of the flare-up, right? The idea is that you have these default set of actions that you just jump straight into as soon as you start to experience a flare-up. And I think that's important, that you don't have to think about it, that it's just a set of steps that you follow, and that you're not really questioning it. You're not thinking, should I do this or whatever. You follow the steps. It's a protocol that you've put in place. You feel a flare up, you feel it coming on, or you're in the middle of it, you catch yourself kind of going down this negative spiral, and boom, the flare up trigger or the flare up protocol, you put that in place. So I think the important thing that I want to dwell on here is, why should you do this? And the first point here is to stop the downward spiral, because when you do get a flare up, it can be obviously physically painful. It can be emotionally trying. It can make your mood go really, really bad. And you're just not generally not thinking clearly when you're experiencing that sort of physical pain. So the reason we have a flare protocol, the set of steps that you just put in place that's just there ready to go, is because your mind's not generally in a good place when you have a flare up. So you can just go to the steps. That's what you've got there. It's your protocol. You just follow it. And the idea is that the steps that you've put in place will help you get past the flare up faster, right? Now, I think it's important to call out that whatever you do in your flare up protocol, and I'm going to talk about mine in a minute, it's probably not a sustainable way of living, right? When you get a flare up and your protocol kicks in, when you initiate the protocol, you're probably going to go pretty extreme in terms of, maybe you go hardcore on a specific diet, or you're doing stretching and mobility a couple of times a day, you're doing breathing exercise a few times a day, whatever it is. It's probably not really sustainable over, you might say, well, why don't you just do this all the time and kind of minimize all your flare-ups? I wouldn't recommend that, because trying to be this disciplined all the time usually just leads to going off the rails at some point. So sustainability is an important thing that we need to think about. So to give an example, this is what I do. And it's very similar to just my day-to-day, but I really dial it in and really get more disciplined when I do actually have a flare-up. So most importantly, I walk. Walking, if you look at my Instagram, the channel's called Walk with Kev. For me, walking is medicine. It is the most important thing that I do to try and maintain, my mobility and wellness in the face of arthritis. I walk every day, and I kind of don't compromise on that. And I make sure that when I have a flare up, that if I'm feeling negative or not in the mood to go for a walk, I just force myself to do it. I go for that walk. Sorry, I'm being interrupted by Nugget here, who's a loud kitten. Sorry about that. So, walking, it's my staple. It is my go-to. I do it every day anyway, but when the protocol gets triggered, I make sure that I'm prioritizing this and I'm making time for this. Fasting is something that I'll often do as well. So I will probably do some sort of intermittent fast. So maybe I'll go 18 hours, 20 hours without eating. And when I do eat, I make sure that, skipping to the last point there, that I eat lots of vegetables, that I'm eating really, really clean. So I'll fast and I'll eat kind of fresh, whole foods, vegetables, fish most likely. and focus just on really quality nutrition, but also just not eating, because I often feel like I feel better. That might not be true for you, but it works for me. Cold showers is another thing I do. I really like cold showers and cold plunges. You could also sauna. There's all these sorts of things that different people find they help. But for me, cold showers, I make sure I'm getting my cold showers in. And then whatever lifting and movement I can do. So I'll make sure that I'm doing some sort of weightlifting, doing some sort of stretching, yoga, whatever it is. But I really prioritize doing the movement, and even just showing up. Maybe I'm only able to lift a fraction of what I normally would, or maybe there's 3 or 4 exercises I normally do that I can't do. Fine, doesn't matter. Just do something. That's kind of my mantra here. So that's what I do. Again, very similar to my day-to-day, but it just gets turned up a notch in terms of discipline. And I think it's also important to say that this is what I do. There's also a lot of stuff that I don't do. Obviously, I'm not doing things like drinking. I'm not doing things like, slouching on the couch all day. I'm really avoiding all those kind of things that tend to make the flare up worse, right? One thing I should also point out, I'm not talking about medication here. Whatever you do with medication related to a flare up, that's between you and your doctor. I'm not really in a position to comment on that. I'm talking about everything else that we should do around it. So the final question is, what should you do? And the answer is, I don't know. You need to do whatever works for you. Figure out what are the things that help. What can you stop doing? What can you start doing? What can you do for 2 or 3 days, maybe to like an extreme degree, that just helps you get over the flare up? And again, the important thing is that it's automatic, that you don't have to think about it, you don't have to question it, that it's just something that you can just slip into. Again, the important thing is we're just stopping that downward spiral where you feel the pain and then mentally you get dragged down as well. And then it's a slippery slope down into kind of more pain and routines falling to the side and all that sort of stuff. So write it down if it helps, and catch yourself as soon as you feel the flare coming on. Just think about, initiate the protocol. Hopefully this helps. I wanted to do this after Christmas because at this time of year, we're all stressed, probably eating a lot of food. There's a lot of chocolate and everything else doing the rounds, a lot of drinking, a lot of that stuff going on, and all of that stuff can, contribute to this sort of thing. So hopefully this is useful. Importantly, if you have things that you do that you help, or that help you when you have a flare-up, please share them in the comments. I think other people would probably like to see that and would like to know. What works for me might not work for you, but what works for you might work for someone else. So feel free to throw a comment down if you've got something that works for you. I think would be useful to share. Anyway, that's it. That is the flare protocol, and that's all I've got for today. Thank you for watching.